Hello, it is I. This video is part 2 of Restaurant to Another World, so check out part 1 if you missed it. Anyway, when we last left off, the time has come for Captain Caveman to depart from his island home, and thus he begins his temporary leave from Restaurant Nekoya. It's Admiral Flugel, who 20 years ago was defeated by the Master of the Sea, drifted upon a dangerous island shore, and proceeded to play Minecraft. These fellas were sailing around on the silly water, stopped to repair, and stumbled upon Flugel's condominium, at last leading to his rescue. He wistfully contemplates his beloved restaurant, wondering if there will be a door available in the duchy he is destined to return to. 3 months later, and that didn't take too long. Curry time. Alphonse-san is riled up after coming so close to reuniting with his vice and hassles Aletta for his dinner briefly, but ultimately receives his curry. He partakes, reflecting on the motivation this lavish meal gave him to survive the harsh jungle climate and his meeting with the original master. After finishing, and as he awaits seconds, Flugel declares the supremacy of curry, inciting Artorias' iconic teasing. Shortly after, the master surprises Alphonse with the promise of a new curry dish. This goth space dragon monologues about her kin's turbulent past with Chaos Jeff of the Infinite Balls. Over and over, their battles with Jeff ended with defeat until at last, the dragons destroyed him of the many orbs. Much like a spider's egg sac, Jeff too exploded into a million babies, giving rise to new species. Unfortunately, our draconic narrator possesses so much edge that merely existing in the same approximate location as these lesser beings would instantly cause them to wear too much mascara, adorn razor blades as jewelry, and begin producing metalcore albums. She didn't appreciate her own accidental ethnocide, so decided to exile herself to the moon to avoid this eternal curse. In exile until today, when a strange ethereal door appeared, Flugel excitedly accepts the master's new dish, chicken curry, and analyzes the difference in color and meat from his usual. He starts with the soup, but is laid low from the intense heat. Combined with the rice, however, the spice dissipates and instead mellows out the savoriness. Flugel spiritually manifests into several chickens in response, then recounts his experience in front of the master. Suddenly, a nude elf telepathically orders chicken curry as well. Everyone is shook. She is scolded for not arriving clothed, and dons something more appropriate using dragon wizardry. Flugel is used to this restaurant's shenanigans by now, and offers to pay for her meal. Meanwhile, Artorias is having an existential crisis. After realizing that a second dragon has hit the building, the chicken curry arrives and is devoured. Alphonse-san catches up with the newcomer's rapid pace, and the two curry lovers proceed to demolish the master's entire stock, mostly this one, who spends the rest of the day doing just that. Bifu Stew encounters her sister, partaking in her treasure, and they converse via telepathy about Nekoya and how it works. The new dragon's name is Kuro, and in order to pay for the meals Kuro eats, Bifu Stew volunteers her as a waitress. The master isn't sure that Kuro will accept, but she does this, which seems like an agreement enough to me. Aletta worries that she is being replaced, while Kuro continues to enjoy her endless plates of chicken curry. The sea. Discount pirate Kirito falls in love with a mermaid, Artie, who several days ago saved him from tragically drowning in the abyss of the ocean after the storm threatening him subsided. Arthur carried him to an island, and they introduced themselves. Roke, the fisherman, thanks his savior, who requests a cash reward. Arte proposes that they meet up in 3 days' time to hang out, which Rocky accepts, given that he probably doesn't have anywhere else to go right now. He mulls over the economic situation of monster-kin races, such as mermaids, determining that Artie's behavior was strange. Anyway, the day of reckoning is at hand, and she uses the power of the sea god to become part chicken. Rico is impressed, and they get going. It's Nekoya. Therefore, they enter. Arte is recognized by the master, and orders a couple of hamburger stickies. Roque is understandably confused, but his fish babe explains. Shortly after, the meal is served, and he takes a bite. It comes with rice and egg, too. Combined with the main meat, the hamburger steak takes its final form and gently evaporates. Wishing for more, Rockler orders seconds. Artie laments her lack of coin, but Roque buys her seconds as well. Later, they get sandy butts looking at the water, and Kirito gets a second date. On her quest to find employment in the capital, Aletta knocks upon the door of a prospective employer. It's Minced Meat Cutlet, who has a lot of housework to catch up on. For 8 copper shekels a day, Aletta may switch job classes to live in maid. She eyeballs a mystery rectangle etched with an intricate design and is reminded by a hallucination of the master that she is allowed to eat the treats contained within. Free samples from the bakery upstairs, and Aletta reduces the quantity. She laments this after the act and returns to work. After the workday's end, the master gives Aletta a congratulatory gift for landing a steady job outside of Nekoya. There is a slight cultural barrier in his presentation, but Aletta is thankful for receiving an extra box of cookies. The master must explain not to eat the silica gel packets at the bottom, and looks worried though. Aletta struggles with the bindings of her psychological id when Sarah's sister, Shia, arrives to check up on her relative. Aletta caters to her, while Shia mulls over her sister's curse, a familial nemesis which causes the adoration and pursuit of adventure. This is naturally troublesome, due to the effects of corralling the afflicted away from the merchant's trade and towards peril. Shia is nervous. To soothe her nerves a little bit, Aletta serves Shia her precious cookies alongside some tea. Shia analyzes each of the exquisite shapes and chows down, finding that these particular baked goods are fathoms ahead of current culinary technology. The cookies were so good that Shia asks Aletta if she can obtain more of them, causing her to rush to retrieve the empty box. Shia's mercantile blood immediately tells her to purchase more of these treasured boxes as Sarah arrives. In the after credits, sure enough, the cookies have been obtained and a good time is had by all. A couple of midgets are scaling a mountain to enjoy a succulent seafood meal. This one doubts his friend's sanity, but notices that this isn't a regular cabin before any unnecessary homicide occurs. It's Nekoya, whose goth waitress spooks the Okyaku-samas with her abrasive telepathy. The more experienced restaurant goer recovers first and orders the fried seafood with booze. Our gruff mountaineers are named Gilheim and Guard, dwarves who are eagerly looking forward to tasting the high-quality alcohol served by Nekoya. Aletta teaches Kuro how to properly ratio beer and serves those bad boys up. The dwarf homies obliterate their beers in seconds and writhe around in ecstasy at the delicacy. Guard is granted the inspiration to dabble in mug creation from the uniformity and clarity in the glass. When their ultra-deluxe 64-ounce premium PP is thrust onto the table, they toast to the ocean of alcohol, and Kuro arrives with the main course. Guard can't be certain this heap of seafood is actually edible, but Gilheim vouches the best he can. The lemon shape is eaten, and Guard screams. The scallops cause him to scream as well, and the rest of the crispy seafood disappears, alongside several more beers. Unfortunately, Guard was too hasty in his gluttony, and neglected to combine the seafood with tartar. Luckily, ordering extra plates is commonplace here, and their whiskey arrives. Elatar receives requests for seconds and thirds. The whiskey is rightfully equated to the nectar of the gods, and Gord presumes that Restaurant Nekoya might be an actual divine creation. This causes Guilehard to monologue about the various other alcoholic beverages offered here, and the day passes by until they awaken from their drunken stupor, finding themselves sprawled outside the cabin. Upon waking up and confronting reality, Hard decides to renovate the old shack and turns it into an inn for mountaineers looking to rest while crossing. This way they can make a decent living and safeguard their precious door behind a vault made of the strongest dwarven steel. Sometime later, this pathetic nerd falls in love with Princess Adelheide's fair beauty. In the southern part of the continent, in the country of the Land of Sand, that same nerd invented ice coffee. This region, prevailing in magical resources, but not much else, led to a relatively advanced civilization of wizards, whose iced coffee prince, Sharif, now struggles to court a certain lady of the eastern continent. His diplomatic moves are going well, but Sharif's sister, Renner, lets him know that his riz game is weak, and he should focus more on bumping up those affection numbers. Either way, Adelheide's illness would prevent the certainty of their marriage to begin with, and the Empire is a huge player on the world map. In comparison to the less prominent Land of Sand, it would be more prudent to turn his attention towards rizzing the princess, rather than buttering the Empire up, due to this power discrepancy between nations. Anyway, Renner and Sharif have different mothers, Renner's being the court magician, who taught both of them magic. They've a pretty tight relationship given this fact, and visit Nekoya together. Sheep is nervous. Those present are Gigampo, Flugel, and Steelman-san, but no fair princess. Sharif turns his attention to his usual order, as Renner does the same. She opts for a melon soda, whereas Sharpeep has an iced coffee. As denizens of the desert, a cold luscious beverage is the only treat to enhance their vibe. Renner has some of the ice cream, then partakes of the melon, and lastly, the frigid ice adorning the top edge. Suddenly, the ever-anticipated Adelheid arrives, and Reindeer invites her to join them at their table. Sharif's cognitions malfunction slightly, but he is at least able to speak to his crush, which is a good start. Some little butterfly babes encounter trouble. A gigantic beast has rudely encroached upon their territory. As expected, it's a door. They decide to enter, and the main green one uses magic beans to create a vine gimp whose sole purpose is to operate the door. First, they must discern the intentions of the anomaly, but to do that, they must enter. Despite the risks, the forward regiment proceeds, finding an eclectic group of humanoid beings. Their leader picks out the creature with the highest composition of mana density and introduces herself as Queen of the Land of Flowers, Tiana Silverio the 16th. Victoria responds in kind, as well as with the formality and elegance of royalty. She replies to the Queen's inquiries on the nature of the Restaurant Nekoya, leaving Tiana curious about the human foods served here. Victoria assists the fairies with their selection by analyzing their species' preferences and ultimately recommends the mixed fruit crepe for its sweetness and overall composition. Aletta serves it and slices the crepe into appropriate portions for the diminutive creatures to more reasonably participate. Their queen wishes to go first due to the safety measure of complete personal immunity to detrimental status effects. The cream and berries are unlike anything she has experienced before. Despite being from the land of honey, the sweetness of the mixed fruit crepe rivals the delicacies of her home. The other sexy bugs partake. As a reward for her precise evaluation, Victoria is awarded a flower seed from Tiana's domain, a thing of great value to the human realm. Victoria promises to pay for the Land of Flowers meals from now on, and the master arrives to appraise the results of his work. Tiana offers her thanks and questions why Nekoya appeared in her lands. The master states that Nekoya just seems to do what it wants though. Victoria informs Tiana about the Day of Satyr requirement for entry, and the fairies head back. A month later, the entire nation is in an argument about which meal is best, while the next group of citizens selected to visit Nekoya begin to form a riot from impatience. The green gimp submissively fulfills its duty, allowing the queen and her caravan to enter, ready to dedicate this day to mirth and merry. Meanwhile, the elf, who I should probably mention at this point is named Fardania, continues her journey to discover exotic foods by reaching out to a friend of her father's. She rudely busts through this village's barrier without asking, looking for a man named Christian, who has been producing uncouth smells in his abode for the past 10 years. Here he is. He compliments her on breaking his barrier so easily. They introduce each other after some brief formalities, and Fardania questions the wacky smell permeating the air. It's cheese, animal milk, and mold, processed through a process called fermentation. Christian was looking to experiment with a way to ferment beans to achieve something similar, citing his visit to a certain mysterious otherworldly restaurant which serves a peculiar food using just that. Her and Christian, of course, must now revisit, and so as they do, ideate upon the numerous unheard of dishes that the master must be capable of creating. Christian brings up his particular bane, natto spaghetti, a meal which smells freaking weird and spooks the other customers, but is made using fermented beans. I don't know what natto tastes like at all, so I can't vouch, but it sounds like something a forest dweller might enjoy. The lady elf seems to, and as Chipian is about to order seconds, Fardania butts in to substitute the spaghetti with rice. Kuro almost gives the master a heart attack with her telepathy by checking to make sure her order is possible, but it is, and Fardine adds a couple of rice balls with miso to the arrangement. Natto with rice is just as good as natto with spaghetto, which reminds Christian of both the taste of friendship and defeat. This little lady has apparently already bested him in matters of the gourmet. Later, at his house, the two discuss how rice exists in the West already, and Kirsten unveils his years of research into fermentation, elven being miso. He gives a jar to Fardania as a parting gift, and she departs on yet another journey in search of exotic foods. Kuro prepares for work and enters the establishment, receiving an exquisite curry breakfast. While eating, she recollects when her sister personally instructed her to protect the fragile beings who operate Nekoya. Admiral Flugel explains how the sea connecting the eastern and western continents is a nesting ground for dangerous monsters. The zoological lesson today is about sirens, beautiful winged women who use their enchanting voices to lure sailors to their deaths. Here are a couple of such beasts, one of which is eager to explore the nests of the Chimera Killer, a creature who for years reigned supreme over an island nearby. She figures that since the killer is a human who was around before their time, he might be old and weak now. Plus, sirens can fly, while humans can't. This is enough reason to forego certain cautions, and the birds take flight. After looking around the island some, they find the Chimera Killer isn't around anymore, and begin their snooping. Discovering his calendar, a sack of coins, and a hidden letter detailing the chronicle of a castaway to this forsaken island, and the peculiar treasure he bequeaths to the next pitiable human who washed ashore. Taking in all the information, the two decide to make their nest in this place to inherit the Chimera Killer's will. They do regular siren things up until the day of Saturn, like flying around and eating fish whole. On the fateful day, they discover the door to Nekoya and gain entry. Aletta greets them by answering their questions and inviting them to eat. The boy is a little more apprehensive than his counterpart, who finds a piano in the corner and begins to unleash a horrendous cacophony of sound, which starts to incapacitate the master and Aletta. Thankfully, Kuro is a borderline divine entity and ceases this unpleasant nonsense before things get serious. The sirens are apologetic and find the mystery of Kuro's telepathy more pressing than their accidental assault. Aletta pulls them from their curiosity to introduce the food served here. They desire raw fish, which isn't kosher in Isekai Fantasyland, so Aletta goes to check with the master, who says they have a meal called carpaccio, which should fit their preference. Here it is. Much to the sirens' elation, they partake of the fresh sea bounty, discovering it to be carefully prepared so as to maximize savoriness without the off-balance of fishy viscera. As usual, the customers have multiple servings all the way till evening, satisfied with the result of the day's events. After closing, Kuro notices that the master has begun to prepare something else: curry buns. Fried rice balls filled with curry. Despite her apathetic facade, Kuro is genuinely excited. Aletta becomes similarly so after being ravaged by a whiff of that fried delight. Them curry buns slap. It's Kuro's turn to partake, and she narrates every step of the process, making sure to describe in detail the texture and flavor of each part of the bun. Kuro especially appreciates the curry, given that her personal vice is the stuff. The buns and lassi, a sweet and sour yogurt-like beverage, are reverently wolfed down in record time, and Aletta bids her precious co-worker goodnight as Kuro thanks her for being thoughtful. The master finishes up preparations for manufacturing pork soup when Aletta and Kuro arrive to work. It's meat day today, and the ladies get fueled up. Aletta yearns for some of that soup, but it's for later, so the master denies her request for now. There were once 4 great heroes who roamed these lands: the swordsman Leonard, great sage Artorias, half-elf berserker, sword god Alexander, and the strongest of them all, the hero Yomi. Several years ago, to defeat the evil demons and end a war spanning centuries, the 4 of them joined forces. However, as a toll for slaying the demon god, the hero Yomi was lost. Of the remaining heroes, Leonard went on to become the Pope, Artorias essentially reinvented magic, and Alexander became a legendary playboy mercenary. Eventually, his wanderings took him to the capital to visit an old friend who has aged considerably. Anyway, Alex wanted to visit the restaurant to another world and figured he could go with a homie. Artorias understands, but states that they should go for dinner, as some of the luncheon diners might find his presence disruptive. The master is flooded with requests to fulfill from said customers, and makes sure to add a complimentary pork soup alongside. Sealman-san is delighted, having heard the rumors of meat day from Tatsugoro. Unfortunately, soup reserves are running low from the popularity, so the master has a little extra work to do between orders. They're almost out of rice because Lionel keeps eating it all, but the master makes do. Meanwhile, Sarah slurps from the soup, enjoying the sumptuousness, which reminds her of family. Sealman-san is harkened back to home as well, and the two share a brain cell briefly. Aletta makes sure to inform the master of the soup's wild success, as all the patrons zealously chow down. Sarah Gold, Sealman-san, Tatsugoro-sama, Alphonse Flugel, a dumb hoe, the grand champion Kagampo, Lionel the undefeated, Alphonse again, Tsugoro, Gargo, Sharpie, and Heinrich again. They peace out individually as well. Time for lunch. Leftover giblets from various dishes while the master begins preparing more soup. Sometime later, Alexander at last enters the restaurant, but not before Sharid gets harassed by his sister for not approaching Adelheid. Aletta appears to regret overhearing the prince get scolded for failing to develop his romantic relationship with the woman he adores. Sharif flees from his verbal assailant, and Artorias shows up with a companion who spiritedly introduces himself. Aletta takes over to absorb their orders, furthermore informing them about the pork soup. Artorias begins to order, but Alex interrupts to assert that he wishes for croquettes and beer. After their meal for the night is properly commissioned, the two sit down and begin conversing. However, their discussion is cut short as Kuro walks past. Her deathly aura makes Alexa's elven nuggets shrivel in fear, causing their conversation to drift towards Kuro's passively oppressive vibe. Anyway, the beers and such are ready and delivered. As he cuts in, Alex reflects on the stark difference between the Empire's croquettes and the Master's, noting the meat bits and crispy exterior. He takes a bite and is immediately flooded with the realization that the late Emperor had good reason to be infatuated with this place. Artorias takes notes, orders some more in advance, then makes sure to lecture Alexis on the tragedy of a croquette. without sauce. The juices are applied and alter the meal with a noticeable advantage, giving Alexander the thought to question if they could possibly experience this food in their own world. Artorius begrudgingly turns his dove of hope into a pink mist with high-level explosion magic, stating that their civilization is simply not developed enough to achieve the same result. He goes on to state that Yomi said the same thing, implying that she still lives. Alex is shook, but Artorius continues that she wasn't killed, just flung forth from their world into this one. She even produced a grandchild, one who most importantly doesn't need sword or magic skills to live. Alex mulls over their past as tools for saving the world and comes to the reasonable conclusion that Yumi was enjoying their life in this peaceful place, full of sensations beyond any imagination. And so the two old-timers toast to Yomi's survival with gratitude towards this world for taking her in. Meanwhile, Adelheid sprints at maximum speed to visit her grandparents' graves, unbeknownst to Alexander, who is already here to coincidentally visit his son and wife's graves. He states how the croquettes were divine, then cries upon his wife's tomb, apologizing for the tragedy which cascaded to her doom. Suddenly, Adelheid pops up to make sure this mysterious sad fellow isn't too melancholic. She mentions her grandfather's grave, and Alexander disappears into the wilderness like a dandelion into the breeze. Back at Restaurant Nekoya, Bifu Stew departs, and the master laments his exhaustion, while Aletta ponders whether the free soup would bankrupt the master. He laughs her question off by stating that they only do this once a month, and that his grandfather always said that extra servants at a restaurant should be provided with food, not money. Everyone is always so happy eating his food that the master can't help but spare a day where his customers can smile a little extra. For their staff dinner, Japanese omelets. And that's the end of Season 1 of Restaurant to Another World. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed these past few minutes, like, comment, or subscribe. Any of that, really. If you veritably expired during this session, maybe consider donating to my Patreon. That'd be cool. That's all. Thanks again. Bye.